The shuttle doors opened with a hiss and stepped onto the surface of 7. The air hit him like a wet blanket. Hot, thick, heavy with moisture that made every breath feel like drinking soup. Behind him, jumped down from the shuttle, her boots sinking slightly into the soft jungle floor. "Well," said, looking around at the massive trees towering above them. "This is going to be interesting." Nodded. All around them, other shuttles were landing. 10 different species, 20 beings total, all here for the same reason, to prove they could survive 30 days on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. The Galactic Survival Coalition had made this challenge simple. Survive for 1 month. No outside help. No rescue unless someone was dying. Each team could bring up to 50 kilograms of equipment, whatever they thought they needed to stay alive. Adjusted the hatchet hanging from his belt. That was it. That was everything they brought. 50 meters away, a much larger shuttle was opening. They were unloading their equipment. Watched as they pulled out case after case. Their team leader, a tall being named, was checking items off a list displayed on his arm device. Portable shelter, check. Water purification system, check. Atmospheric analyzer, check. Medical kit, check. Protein synthesizer, check. The list went on, counted as worked. 63 items. They had brought exactly 63 different pieces of equipment. Another shuttle opened nearby. They emerged, covered in their natural armor plating. They began pulling out weapons, more armor pieces, and sealed containers of food. Counted 47 items before he lost track. All around the landing zone, teams were setting up. The crystalline were assembling some kind of sonic generator. The aquatic were struggling with a water tank they needed to sleep in. They were building a hive structure from prefabricated panels. A small floating drone approached, and it was one of the camera units that would record everything for broadcast across the galaxy. Millions of beings would watch this challenge. "Human team," the drone's voice was mechanical and flat. "Please display your equipment for official recording." Pulled the hatchet from his belt and held it up. The drone hovered silently for a moment. "Is this a joke? Where is the rest of your gear?" "This is it," said. She smiled at the camera. "1 hatchet, that's all we need." The drone circled them twice, as if looking for hidden equipment. "You are aware that you may bring up to 50 kilograms of supplies." "We know," said. "We're good." The drone flew off, probably to report this strange decision to the challenge officials. Within minutes, other teams started noticing. Walked over, his head tilted in the way showed confusion. "Humans, I believe there has been a misunderstanding. You were permitted to bring survival equipment." "We did," said, holding up the hatchet again. Skin changed color slightly, a sign of concern. "That is 1 tool. Surely you have more in your shuttle." "Nope," said cheerfully, "just this." A warrior laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "The humans will be calling for rescue by nightfall. They have brought nothing." "We'll see," said quietly. The challenge overseer, a neutral third party from a non-competing species, approached the gathering crowd. "Is there a problem?" "The humans have brought insufficient equipment," said. "I wish to file a formal concern for their safety." The overseer checked his data pad. Human team is listed as having registered 1 hatchet, total weight 1.2 kilograms. This is within regulations. The challenge permits teams to bring as much or as little as they choose, up to the maximum weight limit. "But they will die," another alien said. "That is their choice to make," the overseer replied. "All teams signed waivers acknowledging the risks. The human team has chosen their approach. The challenge begins now. You have 30 days. Survive." The overseer's shuttle lifted off, leaving the 20 competitors alone on 7. Dark clouds were gathering in the sky, looked up and frowned. Rain coming, big storm probably. The other teams rushed to set up their equipment. They were struggling with their portable shelter. It was supposed to assemble itself, but the thick humidity was making the electronic controls glitch. Kept pressing buttons, growing more frustrated as error messages flashed on his screen. They were trying to waterproof their supply crates. They were arguing about whether their sonic generator would work in the rain. Looked around, reading the jungle the way he had learned over many years of wilderness work back on Earth. He walked a short distance from the landing zone, following. He found a spot where two large trees grew close together. The ground was slightly elevated, which meant water would drain away instead of pooling. Here, he said, swung the hatchet and began cutting young saplings, straight ones about as thick as his wrist, helped him drag them back to the spot between the trees. In 40 minutes they had cut and placed enough wood to make a simple lean-to shelter. The roof angled down so rain would run off. The back was closed. The front was open but faced away from the wind. Gathered large leaves and wove them into a mat. She layered these on the roof for waterproofing. It wasn't perfect, but it would keep most of the rain out. The first drops started falling just as they finished. Within minutes, it became a downpour. Heavy rain hammered down through the jungle canopy. And sat in their shelter, mostly dry. They could hear cursing and frustrated shouts from the other camps. The shelter generator had completely failed, and his partner were trying to hold a metallic fabric over themselves, but the wind kept tearing it away. They were getting soaked. They had managed to get under their supply crates, but they looked miserable, cramped in the small space. Two teams gave up. They couldn't get their hive panels to stick together in the rain. The feline had brought mostly hunting equipment but very little for shelter. Both teams activated their emergency beacons and were extracted by rescue shuttles within an hour. 18 competitors remained. The rain lasted through the night. When morning came, the jungle steamed as the sun heated the wet ground. Everything was dripping. Stepped out of the shelter and stretched. He had slept well. The shelter had kept them dry enough. Was already up, examining some plants growing nearby. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a cluster of purple fruits. "The scanners marked these as toxic, but I think they're only toxic raw. See the way the skin has that pattern. On Earth, fruits like this are fine if you cook them." She picked one carefully, used the hatchet to cut it open. The inside was pale and fleshy. Sniffed it, then touched a tiny amount to her tongue and spat it out. "Definitely needs cooking," she said, "but I think we can eat these." Around them, the other teams were waking up to deal with the aftermath of the storm. Equipment was scattered everywhere. Several electronic devices had water damage. They were trying to dry out their generator. Approached the human camp again. He looked tired. "How did you sleep?" "Pretty well," said you. "Poorly. Our shelter system failed. We were wet all night." Looked at the simple lean-to. "You built that in less than an hour with just that hatchet." "It's not fancy," said, "but it works." Was quiet for a moment. "We spent 6 months planning our equipment list. We consulted the best survival experts in our civilization. 63 items. Everything we thought we could possibly need. And we spent 6 months learning how to survive with nothing," said. "So when we had something, even just a hatchet, it would be enough." Looked at the hatchet, then at the shelter, then at the humans. "I think," he said slowly, "that we may have approached this challenge incorrectly." "Maybe," said, "or maybe you're just learning a different lesson than we are." "What lesson are you learning?" Smiled, "That a hatchet and some knowledge can beat 63 fancy tools any day." As walked back to his camp, started gathering dry wood. "Think he'll figure it out." "Some of them will," said. "The ones who can adapt. That's what survival is really about. Not the gear you carry, it's whether you can change and learn." "Well," said, "we've got 29 more days to show them how it's done." Nodded and began sharpening the hatchet on a smooth stone. One tool, 29 days to go. He had never felt more ready for anything in his life. The first week on 7 taught everyone different lessons. For most of the alien teams, the lesson was that their equipment had limits. And the lesson was that their hatchet had none. On day 3, sat by the stream that ran near their camp. She had the hatchet in her hands, studying it like it was a puzzle to solve. Watched her from where he was weaving a basket from plant fibers. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking that this isn't just one tool," said. "It's dozens of tools, we just have to see them all." She stood and walked to a straight young tree. With careful strikes, she cut a section about as long as her arm. Then she split it down the middle using the hatchet as a wedge. Now she had 2 pieces. She split one of those pieces again, making it thinner. "What are you making?" asked. "A digging stick," said. She used the hatchet's edge to sharpen one end to a point. "I found some roots yesterday that looked edible, but they're deep underground. This will help us dig them up." Smiled, that was the thing about, she never saw problems, only solutions waiting to be found. By the end of the first week, their camp looked completely different from when they started. The simple linta was still there, but now they had a fire pit with rocks arranged around it. Had used the hatchet to dig out the pit and gather the stones. They had a rack made of green wood for smoking fish. They had several baskets for carrying things. They had tools, digging sticks, fishing spears, a bow drill for starting fires. All of it made with one hatchet and knowledge of how to use it. The other teams were not doing as well. The still had most of their 63 items, but they were learning that fancy equipment needed constant maintenance. Their water purifier had to be cleaned every day or it would clog. Their protein synthesizer needed power, and the solar panels didn't work well under the thick jungle canopy. They spent hours each day just keeping their gear working. They were eating through their ration packs faster than planned. They had brought weapons to hunt, but the jungle animals were smart and fast. They were strong but slow. They had only caught one small creature in 7 days. The crystalline were doing better. Their sonic generator kept predators away, and they had brought good supplies. But they stayed close to their camp, afraid to explore without their protective equipment. The aquatic were struggling the most. They needed to stay wet, and their water tank system kept breaking down. They spent all their energy maintaining it and had little left for finding food. On day 8, disaster struck one of the teams. Heard the screams first. He grabbed the hatchet and ran toward the sound, was right behind him. They found the camp in chaos. One of the tree-dwelling predators, a 6-limbed creature with sharp claws and too many teeth, had dropped into their camp and grabbed their water purification system. The warriors had driven it off, but not before it smashed the device against a tree. The leader, a warrior named, was holding pieces of shattered plastic and metal. "Our backup purifier," he said, his voice hollow. "It requires solar power to recharge, but we cannot get enough sun in this jungle without the main system." He didn't finish. Everyone understood. No water meant no survival. They activated their emergency beacon. Within an hour, a rescue shuttle arrived and took them away. 16 competitors remained. That night and sat by their fire. They had fresh fish smoking on the rack and roots roasting in the coals. Had made a simple pottery bowl by shaping clay and hardening it in the fire. They were boiling water in it using a method that seemed like magic to anyone watching. They heated stones in the fire, then dropped them into the water. The hot rocks made the water boil. A camera drone hovered nearby, recording everything. Somewhere in the galaxy, millions of beings were watching 2 humans survive with nothing but a hatchet while teams with advanced equipment were failing. Appeared at the edge of their camp. He looked tired. "May I speak with you?" "Sure," said. "Want some food? We have plenty." Sat down carefully. Offered him a piece of cooked fish. He took it and ate slowly, as if he hadn't had a good meal in days. "Your protein synthesizer not working?" asked. "It works," said, "but the food it makes. It keeps us alive, but barely. It tastes like nothing. It gives no energy. Meanwhile, you 2 look healthier every day." "Real food helps," said. "Your body knows the difference." Watched as pulled the roasted roots from the fire. Those are the purple fruits. Your scanner said they were toxic. They are toxic, explained. If you eat them raw, but heat breaks down the toxic compounds, turns them into good food. Your scanner told you what it could detect. It couldn't tell you what was possible. We have been thinking about this, said quietly. We brought 63 items. We spent months planning. We consulted experts. We thought we had everything we needed. You probably did, said. For the planet we all thought this would be. What do you mean? You planned for a survival scenario, explained. A controlled challenge where your equipment would work as designed. But the planet doesn't care about your plan. Weather happens, equipment breaks, animals behave in unexpected ways. You can't plan for everything. But you did, said, gesturing to their camp. You have shelter, food, water, fire, tools, everything you need. We didn't plan it, said. We built it day by day, using what we found and what we knew. That's the difference. Was silent for a long moment. May I ask you something? Why only a hatchet? You could have brought more. Picked up the hatchet and turned it in his hands. The firelight reflected off the metal edge. A hatchet is simple. It has no moving parts to break, no battery to die, no computer to malfunction. It does what you make it do, nothing more, nothing less. But you have created so much with just this one tool, said. That's the point, said. The tool isn't what matters, it's what you know how to do with it. We could have brought 50 kilograms of gear, but what happens when it breaks? What happens when you run out of filters or power cells or whatever your equipment needs? You become helpless, said slowly, like we are becoming. You're not helpless, said. You're just learning that you relied on the wrong things. Your 63 items gave you 63 points of failure. Our one hatchet gave us infinite possibilities. Stood to leave. Thank you for the food and for the lesson. Any time, said. After left, added more wood to the fire. Think he'll adapt. Maybe, said. He's smart, he's starting to see the problem. That's the first step. What about the others? Looked out into the dark jungle. They could see the lights from other camps scattered through the trees. Most were electric lights from equipment, harsh and artificial. Only the human camp had the warm glow of firelight. Some will figure it out, she said. Some won't. That's how survival works. It's not about being the strongest or having the best gear. It's about being able to change when you need to. Over the next few days and continued to improve their camp. Made a better fishing spear using the hatchet to shape the wood and carve barbs into the point. Created a fish weir, a fence of sticks woven together that guided fish into a trap. They caught more fish than they could eat and smoked the extra for later. They made containers from bark. They made rope from plant fibers by twisting them together. They made a simple A-frame rack to keep their firewood dry. They made everything they needed. And they did it all with one hatchet. On day 13, stood back and looked at their camp. You know what's funny, she said. What? The other teams keep talking about how we're surviving with just a hatchet, like we're handicapped or something, like we're doing this with less than we need. And I don't think we have less. I think we have exactly enough. Maybe we even have more than them in a way. Understood. The other teams were weighed down by their equipment. They spent all their time maintaining it, protecting it, worrying about it. Meanwhile, and were free to explore, free to learn, free to adapt. The hatchet hung from his belt as it always did. One simple tool, but in the right hands with the right knowledge, it was everything they needed. And the galaxy was watching. The sky on 7 started acting strange on day 14. Noticed it first during the early morning. The clouds had an odd color, greenish-purple instead of the usual gray. Lightning flickered inside them, but there was no thunder. That's not normal weather, said, watching the sky with him. No, agreed, something's different. By midday, the lightning was constant. It flashed from cloud to cloud in sheets of purple-white light. The air felt electric. The hair on his arms stood up. Other teams noticed too. The camera drones that had been following everyone around suddenly started flying erratically. One crashed into a tree near the camp. Another fell straight into the stream. Then the challenge overseer's voice came through on the emergency communication system that all teams carried. Attention all competitors. 7 is experiencing an electromagnetic storm. This is a natural phenomenon. All participants are advised to shelter in place. The storm should pass within 48 hours. Electronic equipment may experience malfunctions. The communication cut out with a burst of static. May experience malfunctions, repeated. That's putting it mildly. The storm hit at sunset. The purple lightning came down from the clouds in massive bolts. They struck all over the jungle, and each strike released a pulse of electromagnetic energy. Could feel it wash over them like an invisible wave. It made his teeth ache. All around the jungle, lights started going out. The harsh electric lights from the alien camps flickered and died. Screams of frustration and fear echoed through the trees. And sat in their shelter. They had a small fire burning, but they kept it low. The light from it was warm and steady, completely unaffected by the electromagnetic pulses hammering the planet. "Should we check on the others?" asked. "In the morning," said. "Going out in this would be dangerous, and there's nothing we can do in the dark anyway." The storm raged all night. The electromagnetic pulses came every few minutes. Each one was like an invisible hammer blow that made the air shimmer. When dawn came and walked through the jungle to check the other camps, what they found was chaos. The camp was the worst, and sat among their 63 items, but most of them were now useless. The portable shelter generator was dead. The water purifier had a cracked screen and wouldn't turn on. The protein synthesizer sparked when tried to activate it. The medical nanobots were just gray dust in their container. The atmospheric analyzer wouldn't respond. Looked up when and arrived. His face was the color of defeat. 47 items, he said quietly. 47 of our 63 items are completely dead. The electromagnetic pulse fried everything with a computer chip or power cell. "What about the other 16 items?" asked. "Simple tools mostly. A knife, some rope, a tarp. Things we barely used because we had better electronic versions." Laughed, but there was no humor in it. "We brought backups for the important equipment, but the backups failed too. Same technology, same vulnerability." Was trying not to cry. "We cannot survive with what remains. We must call for extraction." "Wait," said. "You still have some functional items, right? And you've been here 14 days. You've learned some things." "Not enough," said. "We do not know how to find safe food, how to purify water without our system, how to build shelter that will actually keep us dry. We relied on our equipment for everything." "Then maybe it's time to learn," said gently. But shook his head. "We are scientists, not wilderness survivors. We should never have come here. This was foolish pride." As they talked, the emergency beacon from another camp activated, then another, then a third. The team gave up. Their entire hive structure had been powered by electronics. The reptilian team gave up. Their temperature control suits were fried and they were freezing at night. The amphibian team gave up. Their water recycling system had failed. By noon, only 8 competitors remained from the original 20. Just 4 teams. The humans, the crystalline, and the aquatic. They had lost their sonic generator, but they were tough and had brought old-fashioned supplies as backup. They were shaken but would survive. They were in trouble. Their water tank system had failed completely. They were living in the stream now, barely functional. And returned to their own camp. Everything was exactly as they left it. The shelter stood firm. The fire pit had coals ready to be relit. The fish weir was still catching fish. The tools they had made, all of them carved with the hatchet from wood and stone, worked perfectly. "An electromagnetic pulse can't hurt a hatchet," said, touching the tool at his belt. "Or anything we made with it," added. That afternoon and came to the human camp again. They looked desperate. We need help, said. There was no pride in his voice now, only honesty. If you teach us nothing, we will die or be extracted. Either way, we fail. What do you want to learn? Asked. Everything, said. How to survive without technology. And looked at each other, then nodded. Okay, but you need to understand something first. You won't learn this in an afternoon. It takes time, mistakes, practice. We have 16 days left in the challenge, said. We are willing to try. Then let's start with water, said. She led them to the stream. Your purifier told you which water was safe, but water is water. You can make almost any water safe if you know how. She showed them the bark container she had made. You can boil water in this. Boiling kills everything harmful. The trick is using hot stones instead of putting it directly in the fire. Demonstrated. He heated stones in the fire until they glowed red. Then, using 2 sticks as tongs, he dropped them into the water-filled bark container. The water hissed and steamed. He added several more hot stones. Soon the water was boiling. This works? Asked, amazed. It's how humans did it for thousands of years before we had metal pots, said. Next they taught thee about food, showed them the purple fruits again. Your scanner said toxic, and it was right, but toxic doesn't always mean inedible. It just means you need to process it correctly. She showed them how to cook the fruits, how to identify which plants had edible roots, how to catch fish in the weir, how to tell which insects were safe to eat. Taught them about shelter. Your generator made shelter easy, but easy isn't the same as better. Look at what we built. He showed them the lean-to, explaining how the angle of the roof mattered, how the elevated ground prevented flooding, how the back wall blocked wind but the open front allowed smoke from the fire to escape. We built this in less than an hour, said. With just a hatchet, you have a knife in your remaining equipment. You can do the same thing. For the rest of the day, they practiced, tried to build a shelter and failed 3 times before getting it right. Burned her first attempt at cooking the purple fruits, but they kept trying. As the sun set, they had a small shelter and a fire. It wasn't as good as what N had built, but it was theirs. They had made it themselves. How do you feel? Asked. Exhausted, admitted, but also different. When we had our equipment, survival was about maintaining systems, about checking readouts and replacing filters. It was technical. And now? Asked. Now it feels real, said. We are part of the jungle, not separate from it. We must understand it to survive in it. That night 4 camps had fires burning in the jungle. 4 teams remained. But they were all learning the same lesson, that surviving wasn't about having the best equipment. It was about having the best adaptability. The electromagnetic storm continued for another full day. More pulses hammered the planet, but in the human camp nothing changed. The hatchet still chopped wood, the fire still burned, the shelter still stood. On day 16, the storm finally cleared. The purple clouds drifted away and normal weather returned. The challenge overseer's voice came back on the communication system. The storm has passed. 8 competitors remain. 14 days left in the challenge. Good luck to all survivors. Looked at, halfway done. Halfway to proving a point, said. She touched the hatchet hanging from his belt. 1 tool, still enough. And were sitting by their new fire, eating fish they had caught themselves and cooked themselves. They looked different, harder, more confident, less like scientists on an expedition and more like survivors who belonged here. We still have so much to learn, said Wen and visited. That's the secret, said. You never stop learning. Every day here teaches something new. The jungle doesn't care about your degree or your species or how advanced your technology is. It only cares if you can adapt. Your species understood this from the beginning, said. You brought only a hatchet because you knew you would create everything else yourselves. We brought a hatchet because we knew we didn't need anything else, corrected. There's a difference. You tried to bring solutions to problems. We brought the ability to create solutions. As the stars came out over 7, the galaxy watched. The human team with one hatchet, the team learning to survive with their last 16 items, the holding on with their supplies, the struggling in the stream. 14 days to go, and the hardest tests were still to come. On day 21, the jungle changed. Noticed it first when he went to check the fish weir at dawn. The normal sounds were wrong. The birds that usually sang in the canopy were silent. The small animals that rustled through the undergrowth were gone. Even the insects seemed quieter. "Something big is in the area," he told when he returned to camp. "Big how?" she asked. "Big enough to scare everything else away." They saw it that afternoon. The creature emerged from the dense jungle like a nightmare made flesh. It was enormous, twice as tall as a human and 3 times as long. 6 legs, each ending in claws that could tear through trees. Its head was mostly mouth, filled with rows of teeth. Its skin was covered in scales that shifted color to match its surroundings. The apex predator of 7, the thing that made this planet and froze, watching it from their camp. The creature hadn't noticed them yet. It was walking slowly through the jungle, its head sweeping back and forth, hunting. "Don't move," whispered. The creature passed within 50 meters of their camp. They could hear its breathing, deep, rasping sounds like wind through a cave. Then it continued on, moving toward the other camps. A scream broke the silence. They had spotted the creature and grabbed their essential tools and climbed a tree, getting above ground level where they could see what was happening. The hatchet stayed with, hanging from his belt. The camp erupted in panic. Their team leader, a being named Thresh, activated something that looked like a weapon. A high-pitched sound filled the jungle, their sonic device, the one backup piece of technology they had managed to save from the storm. The creature roared and charged. The sonic blast hit it straight on. The creature stumbled, shaking its head, but it didn't stop. It crashed into the camp, smashing their supplies. Thresh hit it with another sonic blast. This time the creature retreated slightly. "They're fighting it," said. "Bad idea," said. "That thing is territorial, not hungry. Look at how it's moving. It's not hunting, it's defending its space." The creature circled the camp, roaring. Thresh kept hitting it with sonic blasts. Each blast drove it back, but each blast also seemed to make it angrier. Then the sonic weapon died. The power cell, already damaged by the electromagnetic storm, finally gave out. The creature charged again. This time nothing stopped it. They ran, but the creature smashed their camp to pieces. Thresh activated the emergency beacon while running. Within minutes, an extraction shuttle appeared. They were pulled up to safety just as the creature destroyed the last of their equipment. 6 competitors remained. The creature, having destroyed the camp, moved on. It walked straight toward the camp and saw it coming. They had no weapons, nothing that could fight a creature that size. Looked at and they both nodded. They grabbed their most essential items, water containers, their knife, some food, and ran. They ran to the human camp. "Please," gasped. "That thing is destroying everything." "Get up in the trees," said. "Quick." The 4 of them climbed up into the canopy just as the creature reached the camp. It sniffed around the abandoned shelter. Then, finding no threat, it simply walked through the camp and continued on. "It didn't destroy anything," said, surprised. "It just passed through." "Because no one was there to threaten it," explained. "They tried to fight, that made them a threat. You ran, that made you not worth bothering with." The creature was now approaching the position at the stream. The aquatic aliens couldn't climb trees. They couldn't run fast on land. They dove into the water and swam downstream, barely escaping as the creature crashed through their camp. 4 competitors left, all human or learning from humans. The creature kept moving. It was walking in a large circle, realized, marking its territory. It would pass through this area regularly now. This was its hunting ground. "We need to relocate," said. "Now." "Leave our camp?" asked. "The camp is just things. We can rebuild. But if we stay here, we'll have to deal with that creature every few days. Fighting it is stupid. We need to move outside its territory." "But all our work," said, looking at the human camp they had built over 3 weeks. "We built it once," said. "We can build it again. That's the whole point. We're not attached to the stuff. We're capable of creating new stuff wherever we go." They climbed down from the trees, took the hatchet and cut some long poles. They bundled their essential items, fire-starting materials, their best tools, some dried food. Everything else they left behind. "Travel light," said. "We'll remake what we need when we get there." They walked for 3 hours, moving away from the creature's territory, and followed, carrying their remaining items. The 4 of them moved through the jungle until found a new spot he liked. A small clearing near a different stream. Good drainage, tall trees for shelter, a rocky area where they could build a better fire pit. "Here," he said. The sun was setting. They had maybe 2 hours of light left. Didn't waste time. He swung the hatchet and started cutting saplings, gathered the ones he cut, and watched for a moment, then joined in using their knife and the skills they had learned. By the time darkness fell, they had a basic shelter up. It wasn't as nice as their old camp, but it was enough. They had fire. They had cover from rain. They had water nearby. 4 hours, said, looking at what they had built. "We relocated our entire existence in 4 hours. "That's the difference," said, sharpening the hatchet on a stone. "When you depend on complex equipment, moving means losing everything. When you depend on knowledge and simple tools, you can recreate your life anywhere." "They tried to fight," said quietly. "They had a powerful weapon, but it failed them." "Weapons are for fighting," said. "Fighting should be the last option, not the first." They saw a threat and tried to eliminate it. We saw the same threat and eliminated ourselves from its path instead. "Is that a human philosophy?" asked. "It's a survival philosophy," said. "Doesn't matter if you're human or not. Pride will kill you faster than any predator." They were proud of their sonic weapon. They thought it made them strong enough to fight. But true strength is knowing when not to fight. That night, sitting around their new fire in their new camp, the 4 survivors talked about what the challenge had taught them. "I thought this was about testing equipment," said. "About proving which species had the best survival technology. But it was never about that, was it?" "No," said. "It was about testing whether we could adapt, whether we could survive when our plans failed, when our advantages were taken away, when everything we relied on stopped working." "And you knew this from the start," said. "That is why you brought only the hatchet." "We knew that equipment could fail," said. "Technology breaks, batteries die, storms happen. But a simple tool and the knowledge of how to use it, that can't be taken away by anything except death itself." "You have been teaching us for a week now," said. "Why? We are your competitors. Helping us increases the chance we might beat you in the rankings." Smiled. "Because the challenge isn't about beating you. It's about surviving, and maybe about teaching a lesson to everyone watching. Out there in the galaxy, millions of beings are seeing this, seeing that sometimes the simplest answer is the right one." "What lesson exactly?" asked. "That you don't need 63 items to survive," said. "You need knowledge, adaptability, and a willingness to learn. Everything else is just extra weight." The next morning, they found the team trying to set up a new camp downstream. The aquatic aliens were struggling. They had lost almost everything to the creature. "Need help?" called out. The leader, a being named, looked embarrassed. "We are not equipped for land survival. We thought remaining near water would be enough." "Water is important," said. "But you need more than that. Come on, we'll show you some things." By day 23, 3 camps were established in the new area, all outside the apex predator's territory. The humans, who were learning quickly now that they had accepted they needed to adapt. All 3 camps had fire. All three had shelter. All three had food and water systems. The technology had failed, but the survivors had not. And in the human camp, the hatchet hung from his belt. One tool, still working, still enough. 7 days remained. The finish line was in sight, but more importantly, the point had been made. Across the galaxy, beings were watching and learning. Sometimes the human way, the simple way, the adaptable way, was the best way after all. Not because humans were better, but because humans had learned over thousands of generations that survival wasn't about what you carried. It was about what you knew and what you were willing to do to stay alive. That was a lesson worth teaching and worth learning. The final week of the 7 challenge changed everything, but not in the way anyone expected. It wasn't dramatic. There were no more storms or predator attacks. Instead, it was quiet, steady, the kind of survival that tested patience rather than courage. On day 24, sat by the fire sharpening the hatchet. The edge had dulled from constant use over the past 3 weeks. He worked the stone back and forth against the metal, the familiar rhythm calming. Was weaving a new basket, their third one. The first 2 had worn out from use. She didn't mind making another. Each one she made was better than the last. Approached their camp. He had come to visit every day since they relocated, sometimes to learn, sometimes just to talk. "May I sit?" he asked. "Always," said. Sat down, watching work on the hatchet. "How many times have you sharpened that?" "Lost count," said. "Maybe 20 times, maybe 30. "Does it bother you, the constant maintenance?" "No, it's part of using a tool. You take care of it, it takes care of you." Ran his thumb carefully along the edge, testing the sharpness. "Besides, sharpening a hatchet is easy. Try maintaining a protein synthesizer." Laughed. It was a sound I'd heard more often lately. The scientist was changing, getting more comfortable with the jungle, more confident in his own abilities. "And I have been talking," said. "When this challenge ends, we want to bring what we learned back to our people." "What did you learn?" asked, not looking up from her weaving. "That we relied too much on technology, that we forgot how to be self-sufficient, that complexity is not always better than simplicity." Picked up a stick from the ground and examined it. This stick. A week ago I would have seen it as trash, useless. Now I see a potential tool, a handle, a poker for the fire, a stake for a shelter. The jungle has not changed. I have changed. "That's the real challenge," said. "Not surviving 7, surviving yourself, your assumptions, your habits, your certainties." Over in the camp was teaching how to build a proper fire. The aquatic alien had never needed fire before. His species lived in water, ate raw food, and used technology for warmth. But now, sitting on land with no working equipment, fire was essential. "The wood must be dry," explained, demonstrating what she had learned from. "And you need 3 types. Tinder to catch the first spark, kindling to build the flame, fuel to keep it burning." Tried 3 times before he got it right. When his fire finally caught and grew, he made a sound of pure joy. "I created fire," he said, amazed at himself, "with my own hands." "Yes," said, smiling, "you did." The days passed, day 25, day 26, day 27. The 3 remaining teams had fallen into a routine. They helped each other, shared knowledge, traded resources. They had found a type of water plant that was edible. They had discovered a clay deposit perfect for making pottery. The humans shared their fish weir design and showed everyone how to smoke meat for preservation. It wasn't a competition anymore. It was a community of survivors. On day 28, a camera drone that had been repaired after the electromagnetic storm returned to the planet. It flew around the camps, recording everything for the galactic audience. The drone operator's voice came through, surprised. "Human team, the audience has questions. Are you willing to do an interview?" "Sure," said. The drone hovered at eye level. First question from the audience. "Do you regret bringing only 1 hatchet?" "No," said simply. Do you wish you had brought more equipment? No, even though many teams with advanced equipment failed while you succeeded. That's why we don't regret it, said. The equipment gave them false confidence. They thought they had everything solved before they arrived. We knew we had to solve things as we went. Second question, the drone said. What is the most important thing you learned during this challenge? Thought about it. That survival is not about having the right answer. It's about being able to find the right answer when you need it. And third question, if you could give advice to future teams, what would it be? Answered this one. Bring less, learn more, trust yourself more than you trust your equipment. The drone flew off to interview the other teams. His interview was different. When asked about his 63 items, he looked directly at the camera. We were fools, he said honestly. We thought survival was a technical problem, something we could solve with the right equipment, but survival is not technical, it is fundamental. It is about understanding the world around you and adapting to it. The humans knew this. They brought one hatchet and infinite adaptability. We brought 63 items and almost no adaptability. We lost 47 items to the storm and almost gave up. They lost nothing because they had nothing to lose except themselves. Do you believe you will complete the challenge? The drone asked. Yes, said, because the humans taught us that we are capable of more than we believed, that we do not need our technology to survive, that our minds and our hands are enough. Added, we came here to prove superiority. Instead, we learned humility. That is a better prize. This interview was the shortest. I came here thinking my species was prepared, he said. We were not. The humans saved our lives by teaching us. I owe them a debt I cannot repay. Day 29 arrived, the second to last day. The morning was beautiful, clear skies, gentle breeze, birds singing in the canopy. And sat by their fire, eating breakfast, smoked fish and roasted roots. The same meal they had eaten dozens of times, but it never got old. Tomorrow we finish, said. Yep. Feel different than when we started. Considered, no, I feel exactly the same. We're doing what we always knew how to do. The planet changed. The challenge changed, but we stayed the same. That's the point, isn't it? Everyone else had to change because their methods failed. Ours worked from day one. It's not about our methods being better, said. It's about our methods being more flexible. A hatchet can be anything you need it to be. A protein synthesizer can only be a protein synthesizer. Visited one last time that day. He brought a gift, a small stone carving he had made. It was rough but recognizable, a human figure holding a hatchet. For you, he said, to remember what you taught us. We'll remember anyway, said, but thank you. What will you do after this? Asked. Go home, said. Rest for a while, then probably go camping somewhere. We like wild places. And you? Asked. I will teach, said. My people have grown too dependent on technology. We need to relearn the old ways, the simple ways, the ways that cannot be taken from us by a storm or a broken machine. He paused. I was thinking of calling it the human way, but that is not right. It is not uniquely human. It is the way of survival itself. Humans just remembered it while we forgot. Day 30 arrived with rain. A gentle rain, not like the storm from week 1. It pattered on the shelter roofs and drummed on the leaves. At noon exactly, the Challenge Overseer's shuttle appeared in the sky. It descended into the clearing where everything had started a month ago. The Overseer stood in the rain, a data pad in his hands. The 3 remaining teams gathered, 6 beings who had survived when 14 others had failed. Congratulations, the Overseer said. You have completed the 7 survival challenge. This is now concluded. Extraction shuttles appeared for all 3 teams. Before you depart, the Overseer said, I must announce the official rankings. These are based on survival effectiveness, resource management, adaptability, and overall performance. He looked at his data pad. 3rd place team. You survived despite significant environmental challenges and species-specific disadvantages. Well done. Nodded, accepting the ranking. Second place, team. Your adaptation and learning curve were extraordinary. You faced equipment failure and chose to evolve rather than evacuate. Impressive. And looked at each other and smiled. First place, human team. You demonstrated perfect survival from day 1 to day 30. You never appeared to struggle. You created everything you needed from minimal resources. Your approach will be studied and taught for generations. Shrugged, we just did what we know how to do. That, the overseer said, is exactly why you won. As they boarded their shuttles, took one last look at Seven, at the jungle that had been their home for a month, at the camp they were leaving behind. Think anyone else will try the one-tool approach? She asked. Maybe, said. Or maybe they'll still bring 63 items and try to survive with them. Both can work. True, but only one way works when everything else fails. The shuttle lifted off. Below them, Seven shrunk away. Their shelter would eventually collapse. The jungle would reclaim it. The fish weir would break apart. The fire pit would fill with leaves. But the lesson would remain. Across the galaxy, the broadcasts of the challenge were being watched by billions. In homes and schools and military academies and survival centers, beings of every species saw the same thing. 2 humans, 1 hatchet, 30 days, perfect survival. And they understood. The Galactic Survival Coalition announced new rules for future challenges. Equipment limits would be strictly reduced. The focus would shift from testing technology to testing ability. Universities added courses in primitive survival skills. Military training programs incorporated low-tech survival methods. Companies that sold complex survival equipment saw their sales drop as people questioned whether they really needed so much. Became a teacher, as he promised. He traveled the world giving lectures called Complexity and Failure, Lessons from Seven. Wrote a book titled Learning to Breathe Air, about his experience adapting to land survival. And then went home to Earth. They gave a few interviews, accepted a few awards. Then they quietly disappeared back into the wilderness they loved. Someone asked during his final interview, what was the secret? How did you know 1 hatchet would be enough? Smiled, it's not a secret, it's just experience. Thousands of years of human experience that taught us one simple truth. What truth? That the best tool you can carry is not in your hand, it's in your head. Knowledge, adaptability, willingness to learn. Those things weigh nothing and can never be taken from you. The hatchet was just a piece of metal. What made it enough was knowing how to use it. And if you had to do it again? Thought for a moment. Then he answered with the words that would become famous across the galaxy. Same challenge, same planet, same 30 days. He paused and smiled. Same hatchet,